Chad and Bobby and I had a chance a few months ago to travel up to USC, and we sat with Dallas in his office. And one of the things that came out of that time is, toward the end, I remember I asked a question about what is the barrier, what's the greatest barrier to being a disciple or follower of Jesus? And I thought I knew how he would respond, but he said something that kind of took me off guard. You said, Dallas, the default system is the greatest barrier to being a disciple of Jesus. So could you describe the default system to us? And is it possible to be aware of the default system and still not rise above it?
The default system is the idea that you can be a Christian without being a disciple. That's the general form of what people perceive as Christianity, whether they are Christians or not. And they understand that you can be a Christian forever and never become a disciple of Jesus. Now that is rooted in the reigning soteriology, the English of which is, what does it amount to be saved? And the prevailing idea is to be saved means that you're going to make it to heaven. And the way that is set up, it does not require really any difference at all in the lives of people. And that's the perversion of the understanding of grace that we live under. It's the idea that grace takes care of everything, and all you have to do is profess certain things or perhaps associate with certain groups. And when you die, you'll go to heaven. Now, that doesn't tell you much about whether you will like it if you get there. And that could be embarrassing. A wise man recently said, if you're bored with worship, the last place you want to be is heaven. And if you don't like God, well, you're in real trouble if you get to heaven, because he's the most obvious thing there. So the question of who you become doesn't come up. It's just the idea that salvation is forgiveness of sins. You have your sins forgiven by professing certain beliefs. So there's nothing else needed. And that's what underlies a system of Christianity without discipleship. So that if you come along, you want to talk about discipleship, the response is, well, this is bait and switch. You didn't tell me this when you got me in here, and now you come around and you say, and this is actually a response that pastors get from their people if they begin to talk about discipleship as if it were something important. I've heard this over and over, and I know of pastors that have not been able to keep their position because they wanted to shift their ministry to discipleship. That's reality. That's the default system. Now, each of us individually has to decide where we stand with reference to that. And as pastors and leaders, we also have to decide. Will that be central? Will discipleship to Christ and a gospel that leads naturally to discipleship? Will that be what I do?